Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited to be here tonight or today for some of you guys in the US. I'm here in Turkey, so it's about 9 p.m. Today, I have a special guest I'm going to introduce in a bit. But before that, I wanted to announce that this is our first webinar of 2023 at Task Drive. My name is Tim Kakir. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Task Drive, and I'm very, very excited to do our first stream, for our first webinar. So before I introduce my guest, I just wanted to make sure that that you guys have the same feelings as I do about Outbound and about what's happening. I find out today's market is a bit of a jungle, right? I'm sure that this is not new. It's been going on for a while, but it's just getting worse. I'm sure that you guys have seen that, right? It's a jungle of marketing messages, sales messages. It's a little bit overwhelming. If we count the number of marketing messages, sales messages, ads we get, right, we come across in one day online, and to be honest, also offline, the number is absolutely shocking. I myself, I think, get on average about close to 100, I would say, messages per day. Even if I unsubscribe, I mark as spam, I still get them. Why? Because we sign up for some newsletters. We want to get some ebooks. We want to get some free stuff, right? Some complimentary stuff, and we do that all the time, right? So I still have a bunch of these coming. Even if I start cleaning my inbox about every week, I'm like unsubscribe, unsubscribe, unsubscribe. So the purpose of this webinar, though, is to discuss more on the approach that will get those responses, not just spams, not any spams, not unsubscribes, but to get some responses and close some deals, right? So this is why we're calling this the sniper rifle method to lead generation in 2023. My guest in a bit is going to introduce an amazing method, and we're going to talk about that for a while. At the end of it, I'll also share a little form that you're going to have on the comments. One of my colleagues will share it, and with that, you can request complimentary leads. You can fill up a very simple ICP form, ideal customer profile form, and we will give you about 50 complimentary leads to jumpstart your 2023 so that you can get some revenue ASAP. Right? So do stick around until the end and get those complimentary leads. So why did I invite this guest? First of all, this guest is a partner of ours at Task Drive, but this guest had a great workshop, and he's an amazing host. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to our special guest tonight. This is Charlie Godet. Hi, Charlie.
Hey, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's an amazing webinar to start for 2023 with you. So thank you so much for inviting our offer. And can you talk to us a bit about Predictable Profits first?
Sure. So Predictable Profits specializes in working with 7- and 8-figure CEOs and their teams who are typically asking themselves one of 3 questions. They're saying, what is it going to take to help my business grow faster? Or maybe they're saying, some months are feast, some months are famine. How do we bring more predictability into our revenue? Or the third question is, look, the company's far too dependent on me. How do we scale? Throughout the years, we've taken many companies over to America's fastest growing companies list. Recently helped a company go from 1 million to just over 45 million in a period of 6 years. Just with the work that we've done together, we've received a number of different recognitions, including being named as the go-to business coach for 7- and 8-figure companies by International Business Times.
That's some awesome numbers, some awesome data there, Charlie. Thank you so much. And our partnership with Task Drive and Predictable Profits is going on for a while now, isn't it?
It has been, actually. My gosh, 7, 8 plus years. It's been a long time anyway.
That is definitely before my time. That's awesome. Great. And so we called it the sniper rifle method, of course. We got inspired by one of your methodologies, one of your amazing workshops that you do, and a course that I think you provide at Predictable Profits. So before we really start diving deeper inside that. But why did you call it the sniper rifle method?
Well, it's funny. When people think about outbound marketing, they often think that outbound marketing by itself is a strategy. But outbound marketing really is not a strategy. It's about as much of a category as inbound marketing. And so outbound marketing is comprised of multiple different strategies and a whole different ways in which you can get certain things done. The sniper method is just one of those strategies. And it's all about just as a sniper in the military, you just, they have their target and it's laser targeted and they do what they have to do. The same thing with the sniper method. It's really about really hitting those highest intent prospects rather than a typical outbound approach, which is a blanketed approach where you reach out to, everybody within an ICP. And that's a great method. But this is just targeting only those who have the highest intent.
Great name. When I play, I think Call of Duty, if some people game and stuff, I do always choose the sniper rifle, because you make sure that you got that target correctly, right? So that's awesome. I know that when we talk about the sniper rifle method, we talk about the accurate customer. So to target those, though, it's not easy. But before we get into that, how do you think someone can adopt the sniper rifle method?
So there's a bunch of resources that are available, to you where you could either do it yourself, or leverage a team like Task Drive to do it for you. There's technologies that are available that will instantly pinpoint the people that are, or the companies rather, that are looking at your highest intent pages, even if they haven't filled out a form or anything else for that matter. And that's ultimately what we're after. Now, I'm probably going to be jumping ahead, but the thing is when you get me starting to talk about this stuff, I get so excited that you just can't shut me up, right? So the funny thing is all day long, where we spend time and effort trying to get people over to our websites. And then if you're doing paid media, you're driving traffic over to different landing pages. But what we know is that on average, you on your website, you might get maybe 3% of the people submitting a form. On a landing page, you're still going to get the majority of the people. It could be anywhere from 30%, to 50, 60%, depending on how targeted the keyword is. But you're still going to end up losing a whole ton of people that visit the landing page and then don't come back. And you get even more people who are visiting your high intent pages and don't end up converting. And I'd like to talk about why that is in a minute. But before we get there, there are tools available. There's Clearbit, which is a much more advanced enterprise-based tool. There's Happier Leads, which is a little bit more affordable for the small business. And then again, this is where Task Drive does a lot of the legwork so that you don't have to be the one to actually spend all this time finding out who the person is in the company and so forth. But in doing so, you're able to say, okay, this person somebody from this checked out my services page. Now they didn't fill out a form and whatnot, but I am going to reach out to them and start a conversation. Or this person has been to my website multiple times over the past several days. And so they already know who I am. So I'm going to reach out and I'm going to approach them with some laser targeted communication. It's a beautiful thing because we're already reaching out to people who know who we are. So there's a multiple prong approach. There's ways to do it. But when you're reaching out and talking to people who know who you are, the odds of response are greater. Your odds of conversion are so much better. This is why I always tell clients that, believe it or not, if you already are getting traffic to your website, there's a good chance, especially for an 8-figure clients, you already have all the leads that you can handle at this moment. You just don't know how to get them. And the sniper method is a way to go ahead and get those leads.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and I like what you're saying because when we think about marketing, we're always like, let's just bring more leads to the website, let's bring more leads. But those leads that are on the website, if we can't identify them, then we're doing something wrong, right? Even if we know that they came to the high intent page, they didn't fill up a form. That doesn't mean that we could find out about them. You've mentioned some great tools, and we are partnering with some of those tools, of course, and we're using that at Task Drive on our service packages. So we do offer that to our clients. And thanks to you, we even started a nice partnership with one of them. So thank you again for that. Um,
You're welcome.
so thanks again. And we always talk about the ideal audience, though, right? Let's go a little bit to the beginning, because we do get clients. To be honest, most of the time they're not even sure about their ICP, right? Their ideal customer profile. Sometimes some of them come with the wrong ICP. We do get them those amazing leads. They do talk to them. Very rarely our clients have the right ICP. How do you
Yeah.
get on with that? How do you help people? Because of course we do help our clients on making sure that we optimize the ICP. We actually find the right ICP for them. But how do you determine the specific characteristics and demographics of your ideal audience, Charles?
Here's the problem of not having the right ICP is that everybody thinks that their problem is unique and different. Many years ago, back in 2005, I went to go to a Tony Robbins webinar. I don't know if you're familiar who Tony Robbins is,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
so I went to a Tony Robbins seminar. And at this point, I had already invested a significant amount of money to meet with Tony one-on-one. And so I figured, you know what, I'm going to just sit in the audience. I was in the front row. And I was like, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to wait till the event's over so I can go backstage and meet with Tony. And so I'm looking at him and I'm thinking everybody else's problem is different than what I. So I'm just gonna wait. Well, lo and behold, just as that conversation was going on in my head, Robin said, I want you to look to your left. I want you to look to your right. And now raise your hand. If you think that your problem is so much different than everybody else's, put your hand up in the end. Everybody in the audience raised their hand. And I kind of laughed. But that's the way that we tend to believe. We tend to believe that our problems are so much different. And when we believe that our problems are different, what happens is we have this barrier that goes up. And we don't hear the messages that are trying to come through to us because it's like, well, they're not really talking to me. I can't remember exactly who it was. It may have been Claude Hopkins that said, if you try to talk to everybody, you end up talking to no one. And so I know the World Cup was not too long ago. And though, if you remember the audience in the World Cup, there were just thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the place, right? So, Tim, let's pretend for a minute. You and I will play a game. Let's pretend for a minute that you went to the World Cup and as did I. Now, what we know is that there's just you can't hear one voice from another because it all sounds like right, all the screaming and the cheering. But if I'm a few rows back and I yell, Tim, what do you think the chances of you actually hearing that are? By me calling your name.
Wow, that's a great question. I'm also a sound engineer, so my ears are a little bit weird. I do hear some really small noises from everywhere, but I think that the chance is quite good in my opinion because
Yeah.
it's a very different noise. And I think that the human instinct, we're quite selfish, or we do want to hear our own name. I think so. I would kind of go, oh, someone's calling me, even if you're quite a bit far. But I don't know what you think about that because I'm coming at this from a sound engineer perspective,
But it's true. And that's what happens is that when you yell somebody's name across the roar of all a similar sound, and it just, for whatever reason, cuts through the noise and it gets their attention. So in Outbound, one of the ways that most companies fail is that they're too broad. They're not speaking to a very specific ICP. The more specific the ideal client that they reach to, and the more specific they speak to a particular problem that they're dealing with, then it cuts through the noise and it gets them to pay attention. Because again, it all comes down to people wondering, is this really for me? So when we're finding our ideal client profile, one of the easiest ways that we go about doing it, especially for the clients that may not have it narrowly targeted, is we say, go back to the Pareto's rule, the 80-20 rule. 80% of your profits are going to come from 20% of your clients. So when we look at your existing clients, of these particular clients, which ones do you generally convert the easiest, pay you the most money? Where do you have the most success? And usually it becomes pretty clear who the ideal client is. Now, you don't want to become super broad and say, okay, well, my clients are just agencies, for example. You want to become even more niche than that and say, instead of agencies, well, what size agencies, and who's the title of the person that uh, you're reaching at in the agency, and what are the core problems that you're actually dealing with when it comes to working with those agencies. So you're not just helping them, let's just say marketing as an example. You're not just helping them with marketing. What is the problem that you're solving? And we can go way, way, way down the rabbit hole in this one. But you really only are ever solving one of three problems. And if you try to go and solve more than one of three, then you end up diluting your message, and you have a more difficult time with conversion. Look, selling and lead generation and everything shouldn't actually be hard. If it's hard, it's usually because your messaging is off and your targeting is off.
Or it's to the wrong person, to the wrong people that you're sending that message, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think in a nutshell is also going quality versus quantity, isn't it? When you're going for lead generation, and this is why,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and this is why I think things have changed a lot. I think that marketing, the old ways of marketing, has gone to this growth marketing trend that we were saying, and now we're talking here about the sniper rifle method. It's really finding those people in the world wherever they are. And you were saying about the agency example. We're talking about accounts, but also we have to dig deeper to the contact, right, to the person inside this agency,
Yeah.
of a certain size in a certain country that has a certain problem. But also we need to understand who is the decision maker or the champion that is going to bring that to the decision maker, and how do you identify that after you found your account?
So, I mean, for a lot of companies, they know exactly who they would be communicating with. For example, in my company, I know that if you're a 7 or 8 figure company that is checking out our website, it's going to be the CEO that is most likely going to be the one that is, reaching out to speak with us. And so that's the person who we're going to target. If we're going to start looking at larger companies, I mean, we do work with 9 figure companies and so forth. Sometimes it's the CEO, but other times we're looking at other members of the executive suite. But that's just my business. In other companies, if let's say a branding agency, as an example, the branding agency might say, well, we tend to work mostly with the CMO. And so, okay, then the CMO is more likely going to be their target market. And so they're going to want to reach the CMO. But that's the CMO only, maybe it's for $50 million companies and above, maybe a CMO. If you're 50 million and below, you still might be reaching out to a CEO. So it's important to understand that the person that you're speaking with is going to change based on the size of the organization itself. Now, look, there's no one size fits all type of scenario, and there's always going to be some exceptions to the rule. But the most important thing with any outbound effort is to understand that your initial attempt, I want you to let go of the outcome. I want you to focus in on just collecting the data, because the data is the most important thing. Once you understand what's working, it's so much easier to put fuel on that fire and grow that exponentially. But if you focus in on the outcome, you're only going to come up with one of two conclusions. You're either going to say, okay, this works, or this doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, you might be too quick to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But if you focus in on the data and you start saying, which part of this is working and which part of this is not working, and then you continue to optimize and fine tune it, you're going to find a strategy that becomes wildly successful. Now, with the sniper method, it all depends on your traffic and the quality of your traffic and how many leads or visitors you have coming in. But it wouldn't be it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to schedule on average between 1 and 3 appointments per prospector and per day on the rifle method, because we're dealing with people very specific. You could even, technically schedule more, but it's not just about sending an email and whatnot. And
Oh.
there's a, you know, there's more to it than just saying, I'm going to just blast an email and automate it as much as possible. My uncle, he told me something many years ago when I was in college. He's an entrepreneur. And he said everybody was trying to do the easy stuff. The whole world is full of people who just try to make everything easy and he said, I'm going to give you what I found to be my secret of success. Do the hard stuff nobody else wants to do. And I thought that was fascinating. And even like now we're one of the things that we do as part of the strategy in the sniper method is we tell the prospecting team, we tell our clients, have your team pick up the phone and actually call these people. And they're saying, wait a minute here, I actually got to call these people? It's like, call them and see what happens. Now, we ran a test several months ago. And because we always get pushback when we tell people, use the phone. And one of the first things that we hear is, well, nobody returns my phone call. Nobody picks up the phone. So, just phone calls, they don't make any
Are
sense.
dead. I heard phone calls are dead many times.
Oh, all the time. Or I hate receiving phone calls, so everybody else must hate receiving phone calls. And that's just the approach that people have had. So they just give up on it. So we said, let's just put this to the test. So we had one group run an outbound strategy with no phone calls. And then we did another group with an outbound strategy that used telephone calls. And just like the pushback that we received on the group that used telephone calls, they got no return phone calls. They didn't speak to any decision makers, yet they said 400% more appointments. And the reason why we believe that is because they're seeing you in the inbox. And there's other ways, which we'll get into, they're seeing you and their LinkedIn and so forth, but then they're also hearing your voice, which is just increasing the odds of conversion. So you do the hard stuff that might not scale, but you mentioned this earlier, Tim. You said it's about quality over quantity. And it really doesn't matter if you're reaching 4,000 prospects a week, if you're only setting, a handful of appointments, versus if you're reaching 200 prospects per week and you're setting 1 to 3 appointments a day. That's 1 to 3 appointments will make any salesperson's day, it'd be very good. It's a good day when you've got, those appointments consistently being booked.
Yeah, if you're going fishing and then you grab a couple of fish a day, that's quite good, isn't it, for a fisher even? But the one thing that I think is very important for people to realize as well, that's what I realized working here at Task Drive, it's that outbound and these efforts of cold calling and identifying the person and going really the sniper method and so on. It's not for everybody. Why? Because I think there's a lot about the average revenue per account as well, right? So if you do have a product that's quite low on the average revenue per account a month, it's a subscription on 29, 49, 59. Don't do your efforts on that, right? But if you're going for kind of enterprise sales, for sure you should be on outbound. But also I think that we're saying about 10K average revenue per account per year, right? After that, you should definitely start understanding outbound really well. And did you saw some numbers on that? Who do you recommend to start doing outbound if they're not doing it yet?
Well, yeah, I do think that you're right. Roughly if you're looking at about $10,000 over the course of a year, I think it makes sense. You could even, depending on how the numbers work and the conversion rate and whatnot, you can go a little bit lower. For anybody
If the
that's selling,
lifetime, if the lifetime is longer, maybe as well, right?
lifetime value is longer,
Yeah.
right? If they're going to stay with you for a while,
Mhm.
then it definitely makes sense. Because it's just a math game. That's all it is.
Mhm.
You're going to you're going to have an SDR spending so much time doing lead generation, then you're going to have to be paying a closer, to close the deals and so forth. So it becomes a matter of what makes the most sense. But generally speaking, $10,000 over the course of a year, or even a lifetime customer value of $10,000, if you have that, outbound is necessary. And for anybody that is saying, is outbound really meant for me, or should I do outbound? I dare you to find a company that is leading the industry right now that doesn't have both an inbound and outbound uh, team. It's really, I don't know of one off the top of my head, because outbound is such a critical component of building a robust strategy. So, um, and again, outbound is just that of a category. Now, you asked me a question, Tim, and I just went all ADD on you, and I'm not sure I actually answered it. Um, but what was the question, or did I answer it?
Well, I think you did answer it, to be honest. Is I think that outbound is for everybody at the same time, but it's also not. But if you do want to lead, I think your industry, you need to get on that channel, right? If we can say there's a multiple channels on outbound, but you have to be doing outbound.
Yeah, and actually, outbound technically exists for every company out there,
Hmm.
regardless B2C, B2B, and whatnot. We just
Yep.
have to be a little bit more creative. So, I had a real estate development company. Now, what the heck? Why would you do outbound for a real estate development company? I mean, for most people, it'd say, well, what are you going to hit homeowners? That doesn't make sense. But one of the things that we did is we wanted to form strategic partnerships.
Mhm.
Strategic partnerships with, we knew that homeowners would be buying things like televisions and furniture and patio furniture and, all these other things out there. So we need to create strategic partnerships. So you can do outbound to reach out to the partners and then form those. And so B2C, having a outbound division where you're reaching out for strategic partners and building a partnership base, that's when you take B2C and you turn it into B2B, when you're creating those high level partnerships. And for B2B, the same thing. If you are low ticket, but you think, okay, this might not be right for me to reach other consumers if it's low ticket, you still have the opportunity to reach high ticket by creating those partnerships with a larger, and you make it B2B type of scenario, because one partnership can produce you with an endless flow of leads. So there's always opportunities to leverage outbound. Now, when we're talking about outbound in this nature, chances are you would not be using what's known as the sniper method. There are a bunch of other methods. One method
Mhm.
might be a research method, where you're reaching out to partners just to engage with them, whether you're getting them on a podcast or you're featuring them in an article to start the conversation. That is one. And other method that we use is our market research strategy, where you're reaching
Mhm.
out, and you're saying, hey, look, we're reaching to the top 100 agency CEOs to talk about a particular topic. Would like to include you in the report. Would you be interested? And then now you're engaging them in a survey type of method. Then you could do just the ultimate outbound strategy, which is just more of that, blanketed method. So there's like all these different types of strategies that you use. You're just going to
Mhm.
make sure you look at what's a situation, and which one is the right strategy, because there's not a real one size fits all. I got a text message earlier this morning from a client, and she said to me, I'm trying to figure out the most important outbound strategy for us to deploy right now. There are so many different strategies. Which one do you recommend? I have a feeling you'll recommend the sniper. And I replied, absolutely. And the reason why that is when we look at, there's two pyramids out there, right? On one hand, there's Chet Holmes' buyer's pyramid, where he said 3% of the people are ready to buy right now, right? That's easy. And then on the other hand is um, uh, Eugene Swartz pyramid, where he talks about, at the very top of the pyramid are those people who are most aware. They've already done all their research and all their homework, and they're just trying to decide between you and somebody else for that matter. And so that's a low-hanging fruit. Those are people that are in the mindset right now of I'm ready to buy. And so the sniper method 100% needs to be the very first outbound strategy for a B2B company, because you're engaging with people who are ready to do business with somebody, and it might as well be you. And oftentimes it's the first person that engages them in a conversation that will end up getting the deal. So that's why outbound is always the first strategy that we will set our clients up with, and then start layering it on with other different approaches. Now, Tim, do I have permission to geek out for 1 minute here?
Oh, of course, please do.
So I'll give you another scenario. You have heard of the funnel that most people have seen before, right? Let's see if I can get this drawn on the screen. The funnel that goes out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've all heard of that, right? Like some people refer to it as top, middle, bottom. Other people refer to it as like the AIDA type of funnel, right? And so, but we've all seen that, and all the marketers today are all really talking about this funnel, and they draw it up and they're trying to make us think that that's the way that people do business. So, any ideas of when that funnel was actually created?
Oof, that was long time ago, because I was a marketer about 15, 16 years ago, and that was already there. So it's even before that, I think.
Would you be surprised if I told you the original funnel concept was created in the late 1800s and only then refined in 1924, I think, is the last time I think that funnel design was refined and used was in 1924. Can we agree that a lot of things have changed?
Absolutely, and we're still keeping that same mindset of that funnel sometimes. And then we're talking about leaky buckets or leaky funnels, but I think I know where you're going, and I'm very excited to hear the rest.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to be able, on one hand, to visualize and categorize and say, okay, top funnel are going to be those with the, they're not in the high buying intent, middle funnel, they're a little bit closer, bottom of the funnel. So it's nice on that hand to visualize, and there can be a purpose for using that funnel as a discussion point. But when we're trying to understand the buyer's journey, it actually does us a disservice to look at the funnel and the way that everybody tends to lay it up. And the way the new funnel concept actually is designed, and I wish I could say that I was the one that created it, but it was actually a team of Google researchers that decided to figure out, how do people actually buy? How do people buy today? And they came up with this concept, I believe it was in 2021. And what they showed is there is a triggering event, something that turns around and says, you know what? I have a problem that I need to get solved, or I have a need or desire or whatever that is. And then they go through this cycle over here of exploration and evaluation, and exploration and evaluation, and exploration and evaluation. And they go through that cycle 27 times. 27 times looking at different options, and does this make sense for me and whatnot. And that was a stat that was put out by Forrester. They realized 27 times going through this exploration and evaluation. That's up from 17 times in 2019. So our buyers have become far more discerning. And then once they get enough information, then they drop down and then they buy. So now let's go into why the sniper method is so important. And if this doesn't excite the people who are listening here, then I'm not quite sure what's going to excite them, because this is really amazing for me. And this is the power of the sniper method. When they go through this cycle of exploration and evaluation, this is when they're looking at you and they're looking at the competitors. So we know that they're exploring and evaluating, and that's why you can reach out to them in that investigative process and start the conversation and help to educate. Because if I go to your website and I fill out a form, the only reason why I'm filling out a form is because at that point, I'm giving you permission to sell me. Let's go into the real world for a minute. I don't know what it's like out in Turkey when you go to decide you're going to buy a car, right? But my guess is it's probably not too far from how you buy vehicles here in the United States. When you go into the car dealership, you walk through the door and you're like, okay, I see a whole bunch of cars here. I don't know which one I want. Just go ahead and show me them all and let's see what it is. Like, you don't
That's more
do
like the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul. Like, you go to the Grand Bazaar, you don't know what you're gonna buy, and you have a lot of people just comes and sells shit at you. But when you go for a
right.
car, you've done your education, right? You've done your researching.
Right. And you walk through the dealership, you say, okay, it's either going to be between this one.
Oh.
I already know how much I'm going to pay for it. I know the options that I want. I just need a little bit more information answered before I'm comfortable making a buying decision. So you've already done your research at home. That's what your buyers are doing. Your buyers are researchers. They're doing all the research on their own. They're only coming to you to say, okay, there's only a little bit more information that I need. So if we wait for that moment for them to fill out a form, we're missing a massive opportunity, because it's going to be the company that provides the information that becomes more likely going to be the one that's actually going to get the deal. So, that is one of the exciting parts of that sniper method. As people are going through this cycle of exploration and evaluation, we can reach out to them. I mean, this is where it's beautiful, because there was a report that was done a long time ago, several years anyway. I think it was Gartner in combination with Facebook, maybe, where they showed a negative purchase intent with a click. So a click had a negative purchase intent, meaning you're almost better off having them not click than click. It was weird how that works. But the interesting thing is it just highlighted that buyers have become researchers. I mean, if you think about your own buying behavior, when's the last time you clicked on an ad and you're like, "Oh, this is great. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to
Let me
buy."
buy it. Yeah, no, that didn't
Right.
happen. Yeah, I take a month sometimes of researching a product, reading the reviews, finding videos on YouTube, and then hopefully I'm gonna go to the shop and buy it, right?
Yeah. And so, what we found is only 7.5% of marketing qualified leads will
Mm.
do business with you between 0 and 90 days, but 42.5% of marketing qualified leads will buy something between 90 days and 2 years from now. So it does take a long time. So if somebody clicks on an ad, more likely than not, they're not going to just buy from the ad. It's just part of their research process. And when they decide they're actually going to buy, then they'll either go to Google and type in the company name, or they're going to remember the URL and go right to the URL. That's typical for the majority of the buyers. And if you think about how you buy, and for our audience listening, if you think about how you buy, I would tend to believe that most of your purchasing is actually done that way. So when we look at our paid media, if you're able to layer on the sniper media or the sniper method to your paid media, now what happens is somebody goes to a landing page and you have really targeted keywords. You have an ad that makes sure that it attracts only the high intent buyers. You take them to a landing page, then it triggers it lets you know, hey, somebody from this particular company has visited the landing page. You start the outreach process. What you're going to find is your cost of acquisition on your paid media goes way down, because now your conversion rates start to go up more.
Mm.
So everything tends to work hand in hand. That's it, let alone just the organic traffic. If you're doing paid media, this is why I say you have more leads than you know what to do with,
Mm.
right now, with the right tools and resources available to you.
Well,
I
that
mean,
is the issue. So sorry, I cut you there,
yeah,
Charlie. But that is the issue that we get a lot, because people think they're like, oh, okay, my form didn't get filled up or so on, and it's the example of the car buying, right? That you said. If we
yeah,
do wait for that moment, there's so many other people that might suddenly get inspired to buy from a competitor. But if
yeah,
we do tap into that, to those leads that visited our website, and a lot of our visitors possibly today that are here, our listeners, our viewers, might not know these methods, that we can actually identify those people. And
yeah,
this is why I'm just going to go back a little bit to our what we call the cycle, right? it's not a funnel, but we do a little bit of a cycle here at Task Drive, and it's basically we do the lead research, right, from your ICP. We get you
Yep.
those people, right? It's a little bit of a bigger bucket, right? We can pre-target these contacts for you, right, to make sure that the ad spend is accurate and it's not just let me go on an audience on Facebook and hope for the best. No, it's these are your ICPs. We're going to target these ICPs, right? These
Yep.
people. These people come to your site because we've done the pre-targeting. We've targeted them to come to your website. Then we can identify those people, right? Then we can say, okay, they visited twice, 3 times in the last couple of weeks. It's like, okay, that's high intent, right? They visited a few times, not just once, but they came the week after, they came the week after, and maybe their CEO came and the CFO came, right? And if the
Yeah.
CFO came, you're like, oh, okay, the budget is starting to get ready, right? And then what we do then we have our appointment setters to call these people. Hey, we know you're visiting our site. Let's talk, right? And that I think it's acting earlier on their buying journey and making sure that we hold their hand and we help them finish that buying cycle.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's funny because, well, I was just kind of curious um, with the viewers that we have. I'm like, there's definitely some people that have already gone to predictableprofits.com. And so, sure enough, I checked, and the only people that we have being identified are the people that have visited our services pages or visited
Mhm.
multiple pages or a landing page and whatnot, because we're not going to waste our time on everybody who just visits the website. We're going to visit those people. And then only if they fit within a certain ICP. And that's the
Mhm.
important thing. So, you know, task drive, or if you're running your own outbound, you're not going to want to just reach everybody.
No.
That's a waste of your time. You're going to set parameters and filters that say, okay, so if the company is located in these countries, if they have X amount of employees, if they're in such and such industry, if they have a revenue of such and such, whatever that might be. And so you might have 1,000 people visiting your website a day, but of that 1,000 people, it's possible that maybe you only find 50 that
Mm.
make sense for you to reach out to, or even 25. Actually, at this point, we're dealing with high intent prospects.
Yep.
So, you know, if you've got it honed in and you're at least identifying them, man, it's just super exciting.
And someone
Now,
who spent an hour on your webinar, right? Let's say that somebody came and spent an hour on your webinar and they visited your site in the last month a few times, you know that they're getting more and more information about you. So
yeah.
combining those data points, as you were saying earlier, combining those data points and making sense of that data, not just from a touch point, but a multi touch point approach, is also the sniper method, isn't it?
I will tell you something that's just kind of funny that you end up seeing by accident. We end up seeing our competitors who are researching us as well, right?
Yeah.
So our competitors come up, and it's like, okay, this is kind of funny. We know who's. And we coach a lot of our competitors anyway, so it's okay. Some of them may actually end up becoming clients. Um, but it's funny to see all the competitors out there. It's even cooler, and it always gets us excited when we start seeing, well-known like celebrity entrepreneurs or whatnot that are also, coming and checking out um, the site too. So there's just sometimes it can just be fun to see,
Yeah.
who might be there and who's not there. Um,
That makes me laugh, Charles, because we do have on our webinar a few of our competitors, team members have signed up, and we saw that as well. And we're like, oh, well, welcome to our webinar, and we do see them on our website as well, absolutely. And identifying those does make us, okay, we're doing something good, right? And it gives you a little bit of a boost, I think, as well, right? And morale wise, and you know that you're going the right way.
Yeah, and actually, even though I mean we helped one of our clients who's a competitor earn multiple eight figures in revenue, and most people look at us and go, "All right, man, you're nuts!" Like that, you would go ahead and do that. But the reality is that the longer you play in this game, the more you realize that there are more people in this world than you have the ability to truly help. And when you come at it from an abundance mindset, and you're like, you know what, I don't care. I'm just going to give you everything I have. All of a sudden, everybody just grows a lot more and a lot easier. So my competitors can often become some of your strongest allies. And look, there's going to be plenty of people that they might meet me and they might say, I don't. He looks too old. He looks too young. I don't like the sound of his voice. What he says doesn't resonate with me, or I don't like working with a guy with a tattoo, or whatever it might be. And I might just hit them the wrong way, and so they'll choose to work with somebody else. And so they're going to be competitors that they would work for them either, and we can refer business back and forth, and everybody wins. So I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
no,
went on
but
that.
yeah, no, that was awesome. We had a good laugh there as well. But I want to go back a tiny bit into something that we were talking about, our ICP, our ideal customer profile, right, or our audience.
Sure.
And you were saying, that the CEO is going to buy, for your business makes sense, but let's say that for a business that like our business, right, we
Yep.
might have the head of sales, the head of marketing checking us out, right?
Yep.
And we possibly on our ICP, we're saying it's the CEOs of businesses, right? So maybe we're making a mistake, right? Because we're targeting the CEO, and the CEO is going to make the final call, and possibly the CFO is going to have to get involved, right? But the head of sales, or I used to call this when I was in marketing, I used to call this the champion, right? It's the person that is going to identify the solution to their problem and keep
Yep.
bringing it up to their CEO, bringing it up to their CFO. So how many do you think ideal customer profiles you can have in a company for a B2B business that is doing on average revenue per account over 10K? Have you seen crazy numbers like you need 5 to 7 contacts, or you need about 2 to 3 contacts on the decision
So
making cycle?
it depends on the size of the company rather than the size
Hmm.
of the purchase. So if the company's 100 million, or if they're a $1 billion company, it's totally different.
Hmm.
Um, and the larger the company, the more it becomes decision by committee. And so when it becomes decision by committee, generally speaking, we have an idea of who the people we've spoken with in the past are. Might be marketing manager and CMO and VP of marketing, and you get an idea of all these different people. So you say, okay, I'm going to, reach out to this group of people,
Mm.
and within this group of people, I'm hoping to at least get, one appointment. So I'm yeah, we've talked about email, we've talked about telephone, but there's many different methodology or tools that you can use to layer things on top of it. We love using LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Mhm.
LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a wonderful tool because when you go into a company, you can see who the decision makers are within LinkedIn Sales Navigator. But then also, as you're nurturing and building that relationship, you can create a lead list inside of LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Yep.
And then what you could do is, like, comment, and engage with your prospects. And then, from there, you're giving them these dopamine hits, which, it makes it easier to open a door and have a conversation. Um, so we also, retargeting is a strong component of it.
Yeah.
When you're going to research somebody, you want to make sure that you're the most known in the industry. Shama Hyder, who's a very brilliant marketer, she was known as one of the top LinkedIn influencers for many, many, many years. Brilliant, brilliant woman. Shama frequently talks about that. Before you can make a purchase, you've got to win the battle of mindshare. So you got to
Mm.
become the most known. And so when you're prospecting somebody, if they're seeing your ads all over the place, and retargeting is super inexpensive, right? They're seeing your ads all over the place. Then they're seeing you in the inbox. They're hearing you on the phone. They're seeing you engage with them on LinkedIn. Eventually, through the laws of effective frequency dictate that it takes 20 brand impressions from somebody to go, I don't even know who the heck you are,
Mm.
to now, man, for whatever it is, I want to do business with you. And so our general philosophy is that you never actually want to sell a cold lead. So if you're selling a cold lead, your odds of closing them are around 10%. That's industry standard, 10% closing a cold lead. Now, I don't know about you, but if my close rate was 10%, I'm not sure that would be enough to get me out of bed in the morning, right? But what you want to do is you want to get that close rate closer to 30% and above.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you get that close rate above 30% and above is you turn them into a warm lead.
Yep.
And the way you get them into a lead is, again, the more brand impressions that they have, the more they see you over and over again, the warmer they get. So I want your audience to think of 3 words: consumption drives conversion, consumption of brand message, consumption of content, consumption of all this stuff. An email is considered consumption. Listening to your voicemail is considering consumption. The more they consume, the greater the conversion.
Well, I'm glad that I brought this question because, I think that having still a greater list of leads that are quite fitting your ICP, even if they're not the decision maker, but they're in the company, I think is still important because of the
Yeah.
committee that you said, first of all. And as we're talking to bigger clients that have really, really high average revenue per account, the decision making process is not from one person. So you have to influence the different people there as well. So we do approach it that way as well. If you're going to tell us an account, or we find the accounts and we're like, here's your accounts that they're your the ICP. These are the people who are going to buy your service or your product. But here are a bunch of people that you should be targeting, 7 people, right? And then sometimes we do have clients that are like, no, but that's the person who's going to buy. We're like, yeah, but until it gets there, you have so many other people that you have to influence, right? They have to understand also what you're selling so that they can vouch for you almost, right? They do vouch for you. Then the topic comes, they're like, oh, I know them, I've seen them, they've spoken to me as well. And then you're like, oh, okay, so they are legit, right? So we do have to go a little bit broader, and this is why I wanted to bring, because the sniper method is very specific, but you do need still
Yes.
that a bit broader reach so that you can come to that final appointment.
Absolutely. Especially the bigger companies. If
Yeah.
your decision maker is the CEO and you're targeting, 7, 8-figure companies up to about maybe 50 million, and it's a CEO, then you just target out. There's no committee there. The CEO makes the decision. But you're targeting bigger companies, then it's decision by committee.
So I have another question here. We've been at it for 52, 53 minutes, and I had so many other questions. But so going back to what we started, right? The ICP, and sometimes the wrong ICP, sometimes it's almost there,
Yeah.
but it's not. How can you optimize that with customer feedback and engagement data? Because you and I do understand about engagement data, looking at reverse IP lookup, looking at who came to my site, talking to your customers, and so on. But what are some basic methodologies that today our viewers here can really optimize their ICP with their customer feedback and some engagement data? What would you recommend for them?
I think you actually kind of really nail. You got it down right there. I mean, it does come down to the data part of it, and then kind of what we spoke about earlier, that 80-20 rule, about 80% of your profits are going to come from 20% of your clients, and then where you getting your most testimonials, and then there's another element of where are you closing deals the easiest. And it's funny because I want companies to make sure they don't fall into a particular trap. And this happens all the time. We worked with a particular client who said, look, I've got clients all over the place. I go, what do you mean? He said, well, I've worked with Red Bull. I've worked with Coca-Cola. I all the way down to, a whole bunch of different attorneys and whatnot. It's like, okay, great. But where are you most known? Well, I'm more known with the attorneys. Okay, awesome. And of those deals, which ones are easiest to close? Well, the attorneys. Where are you getting most of your, easiest to close? Let's look at most of your revenue and whatnot. Even though they had a few really, really big deals, it just seemed like the attorneys are the easiest. And then, well, what size law firm? And so we were able to hone that in. And once we niched down in a very, very specific, okay, we're going to go for law firms within this size and so forth, that really helped to just massively explode the growth of his company, it became a lot easier to sell. He became the most known competitor in the entire industry, allowed him to, I think he's now been on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list 6-7 years in a row, something like that, grown by thousands and thousands of percent. But none of that would have happened if they didn't have the foundation of a tight niche. You can't do, your outbound's going to fail. It's going to fall on deaf ears. Your marketing is going to fall on deaf ears. You're going to work so much harder than you otherwise should. Sales and marketing isn't hard when you have the foundations put in place.
Very well said. Yeah, absolutely. Those foundations is key. We're coming to an end. I just want to ask you, is there any other tip that you had that you just want to share with the audience that you're like, okay, let me say this before we close off?
I guess I will say that our buyers have changed considerably in the last years. Most CEOs and executive teams and whatnot are not prepared for the market that is coming. I think most people can agree that we're facing a recessionary type of market. And most people have never worked inside of a recession. They think that, okay, just because I went through 2020, I can go ahead and I'll be able to succeed in this market. And that's actually not the case. Totally different market. What I will say is that there's no such thing as a good market or a bad market. There's just different markets. If you give me the choice and say, Charlie, where do you want to grow your company? Do you want to grow your company in a bull market, or do you want to grow your company in a bear market? I will choose a bear recessionary type market every time. And the reason for that is because in good markets, mistakes are forgiven. Anybody can be out there throwing spaghetti at the walls. But in bear markets, mistakes are punished. And when you become far more strategic, you make smart moves, it's a lot easier for you to capture more market share. And this is where really dominant companies tend to thrive. Now, as far as a consumer is concerned, our consumer is the more discerning consumer. So when you're targeting your market, you have to target your market with an understanding that it is the most discerning consumer that you're reaching, not just anybody, but the most discerning.
No, I love what you said, and there is a recession coming. Absolutely, we've seen it coming. I think 2020 was us trying to make sure the recession doesn't come from the pandemic, and we kept printing money and so on. So it does have to bite us back at some point, and I think that point is getting closer and closer. But I love what you said, because also what I realize is that the ones who come out of this recession of this bear market are usually the industry leaders. They become industry leaders during that bear market, right? So thank you so much for those great tips. And where can people go and find more about you? Can you give us a call to action for people as well?
Sure. Well, if you go to predictableprofits.com, we have what's known as a speed to scale blueprint. And you can take the blueprint and get an understanding of the framework that's required to create more predictability, more sustainable growth in the business. And you'll see that when you go to predictableprofits.com. Now, I do warn you, if you go to predictableprofits.com and you do click on the blueprint and you don't actually fill it out, you can expect my team to reach out assuming that our data, that we find you through the sniper method. And depending on the company, it may be 50 to 70% of the people will be identified. So, but yeah, no, predictableprofits.com. Grab your blueprint. That'd be great.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. And I do this with comfort because Charles and Task Drive had a long-term partnership, and a lot of Charles students or other mentees, they come to us to continue that blueprint and to scale their company. And I think in 2023, our partnership is going to get even closer, starting with this webinar. Thank you so much for coming here. And I just want to remind everybody that, let's kick off your 2023 successfully. Come and get 50 complimentary leads. My colleagues has also posted, I think, your website on the LinkedIn chat. I think we're also on YouTube, and we will make sure to put the form The form is going to be active, I think, 48 hours or so. So please do fill it up if you do want your 50 complimentary leads. And as Charles said, we will make sure as well that we're contacting you and bringing you value so that you can scale your company in this bear market. Charles, thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you.
Or today in your time.
No problem. Thank you. All right.
Speak soon. Take care. All the best. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.